Welcome to this explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to dive into this one with you today. We all strive for success, right? We're chasing promotions, we're building businesses, we're always aiming for the top. But here's the kind of startling premise we're exploring today. Achieving that success, and the power that actually comes with it, it alters us. It physically and psychologically rewires who we are. It literally changes our brains.
Consider this really famous observation from the 19th century historian Lord Acton. He said, "Power tends to corrupt and absolute power corrupts absolutely." Now, for over a century, we've largely treated this as just a cynical, historical observation. But as we unpack the source material today, I really want you to ask yourself, is this just some philosophical musing, or is it a biological reality confirmed by modern neuroscience?
To kick things off, I want you to play along with me on a famous experiment designed by researchers Adam Galinsky and Dasher Keltner from UC Berkeley. Okay, take your finger and draw an imaginary capital letter E on your forehead. Go ahead, just quickly draw it. Done? Okay, now, which way is the E facing? Did you draw it so that someone looking at you could read it, or did you draw it backwards so that only you could read it from your own perspective? Well, the researchers found that powerful people consistently draw it backwards. They become so self-oriented that they literally lose the basic capacity to perspective take, to see the world through someone else's eyes.
So how do these lab findings actually translate into the real world? It's not just about billionaires or politicians. This everyday erosion of empathy, it crackles in every classroom, every marriage, and every workplace. Psychology papers reveal some honestly shocking behaviors. For instance, rich kids in the US are actually more likely to shoplift. Drivers of high-status cars, like BMWs, are significantly more likely to just blast right through pedestrian crosswalks. In lab settings, powerful individuals are more likely to lie in negotiations, and get this, they will literally take candy from a jar clearly labeled as being for children. It's wild, but it proves that when we feel powerful, our psychological brakes simply fail.
This brings us to how leadership styles are shifting on a global scale. Historically, much of successful leadership relied on soft power, which is the ability to influence others indirectly through shared values, rather than just coercing them. But researchers are noting a marked shift away from this, moving toward a more coercive, Machiavellian type of power. The source material points to Donald Trump's leadership style, characterized by a demand for absolute loyalty and aggressive policy, as a highly visible example of this shift. And it's not isolated either. Political scientists at King's College London have charted an increasing worldwide tolerance for strongman, authoritarian leaders who value authority over empathy.
Okay, let's move on to Section 1, the neuroscience of winning. We're looking under the hood of the human brain.
So, let's dive into it. It all starts with what neuroscientists call the winner effect. Think of this as a chemical metaphor involving your brain's gas pedal and its brakes. Step 1 is the win, achieving a major success. Step 2, the accelerator is slammed down. Your testosterone and dopamine levels spike, which fundamentally rewires your brain's reward circuitry to make effort-based rewards feel intensely pleasurable. Then, Step 3, the brake lines are cut. Your levels of cortisol, that's the stress hormone that induces caution and fear, they just drop dramatically. The result, you're left in a totally disinhibited state with incredibly high risk tolerance and an intense, almost tunnel vision focus on your goals, completely free of stress or fear.
And this table brilliantly illustrates how those chemical changes become permanent personality shifts. The German socioeconomic panel tracked massive amounts of long-term data on what's known as the co-responsive principle. Basically, the experiences of success reinforce the exact traits that got you there, permanently altering your 5-factor personality model. Neuroticism decreases because wealth acts as a buffer against stress. Openness actually increases because success grants you access to new experiences. But interestingly, extroversion significantly decreases as prestige goes up. High-status individuals realize they no longer have to perform that social mating dance to get what they want, right? Their title does the work for them. This drop in extroversion perfectly explains why wildly successful people so often become socially isolated.
Which brings us to Section 2, the empathy deficit. Let's look at why the powerful stop caring.
So this brings us to a really fascinating concept called motor resonance. This is a fundamental neurological mechanism where your brain actually mimics the actions and feelings of someone you're watching. It is literally the biological foundation for human empathy. Well, researchers at McMaster University used transcranial magnetic stimulation to look inside the brains of people who felt powerful, and they proved that powerful brains experience massively reduced motor resonance. That means highly successful people aren't necessarily choosing to be callous. They're often physically and biologically incapable of mirroring and feeling another person's pain. And this loss of empathy is wildly exacerbated by time pressure, which, as we know, is a constant in the lives of successful people.
Consider the famous Princeton Good Samaritan study. Trainee priests were asked to walk across campus to give a speech about the Good Samaritan. On the way, they passed a stranger slumped in a doorway, clearly in distress. Now, when the priests were told they had plenty of time to get to their speech, a solid 60% of them stopped to help the stranger.
But watch what happens when urgency is introduced. When the researchers told the trainee priests that they were late and needed to hurry, which triggered extreme goal focus and time pressure, only 10% of them stopped to help the man. 10%! It proves exactly how an intense task orientation, fueled by the pressures of success, completely crushes human compassion, even in people training to be priests.
Now for Section 3, Cognitive Illusions and Biases, Protecting the Powerful Ego.
First up here is the illusion of control, a concept coined by Harvard psychologist Alan Langer. Because humans desperately crave agency in an uncertain world, we convince ourselves we control random events. It's the soccer dad who insists his unwashed lucky jersey helps the team win. Or hey, it's you, mashing the closed door button on an elevator, even though the ADA deactivated those buttons back in the 90s. Today, experts warn we're even doing this with artificial intelligence, just blindly trusting predictive algorithms and overestimating our control over complex systems simply because it makes us feel safe.
Next is the self-serving bias. This is our tendency to attribute all of our successes internally, like I won because I'm smart and hardworking, while attributing all of our failures externally. I lost because the market was bad, the referee was blind, or it was just terrible luck. This bias is absolutely rampant in professional athletes and corporate executives. And while it acts as a shield to protect self-esteem in high-stress environments, it creates a massive blind spot, making it practically impossible for powerful people to learn from their mistakes or accept critical feedback.
When these biases go unchecked for years, they curdle into something far worse than just arrogance. British neurologist Lord David Owen highlights a critical difference between narcissism and what he calls hubris syndrome. Narcissism is a clinical personality disorder developed early in life. Hubris syndrome, however, is a temporary situational illness triggered purely by the acquisition of power and prolonged success. It's a condition of the position, not the person. And it results in extreme, unchecked self-confidence, an obsession with personal image, and a complete detachment from reality.
Okay, moving on to Section 4, Antidotes to Hubris. Let's look at strategies for staying grounded.
I know, that all sounds incredibly bleak, but there is hope. Here are the practical, science-backed antidotes curated from Atlassian and top psychologists that you absolutely must actively engage in to stay grounded. First, you have to intentionally seek regular, honest feedback and enforce absolute accountability. Look, if you're the smartest person in the room, you are in the wrong room. Second, adopt servant leadership. Do the grunt work. Jump in and do the mundane tasks to physically remind your brain what the bottom rung of the ladder actually feels like. Third, use the outside view, meaning rely on hard data rather than your gut intuition. Fourth, keep truth tellers close. Winston Churchill had his wife, Clementine, who bluntly told him when he was acting contemptuous toward subordinates. And finally, intentionally enter spaces of vulnerability where you hold less power to reconnect with your shared humanity.
We have covered a lot of fascinating ground today, from the chemical rush of the winner effect to the literal erosion of our empathy mirroring. So I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought to chew on as you go about your day. Take a hard look at your own goals, your leadership style, and your relationships. Is your pursuit of success costing you your connection to reality? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, stay grounded, and I will see you next time.